Welcome into the Fighting Saints Report. Jack Molesky joined by Jim Leitner. The first Fighting Saints Report of March as Dubuque ended the month of February kind of the way they've ended just about every single month on a high note. There haven't been many down notes for Dubuque, but outside of the month of December, this was yet another month where they won 2 games to finish it off. Friday night over Sioux City, a 4-3 victory. Saturday over Sioux Falls, a 4-2 victory, sweeping the season series with both Sioux City and Sioux Falls, and most importantly for Dubuque, maintaining that gap that separates them from a first round, or separates them from having to play in the first round, I should say, and taking care of business on home ice was the biggest key once again.
No question about it, and it's kind of fun at this time of the year where you don't have to really scoreboard watch. The Fighting Saints are pretty firmly in that number 2 spot, and you don't have to worry about the teams, who are chasing you. You don't have to kind of hope that they lose, or, there's really no scoreboard watching. You're in a good spot. You can take care of your own business. And, that's exactly what the Fighting Saints did this weekend. They took care of business against two pretty good teams. I mean, Sioux City is a team that's in last place in the Western Conference, but I think they're a lot better than their record shows. And, they have some good defensive structure. They just don't have a lot of offensive finish. So, and as obviously Sioux Falls is a team that's been really on a good roll here since since beginning of December. So, 2 good quality teams, and good for the Fighting Saints for taking care of business and again adding to that cushion.
Yeah, you had 2 teams heading into the weekend in completely different directions, and they even swapped some players right before this weekend series. Sioux Falls sending a couple younger players to Sioux City for their top 2 scorers in Sam Stang and Ian Malcolmson. And so we saw a Sioux City team that, and you mentioned at the top of the broadcast, really has nothing to lose the rest of the season. They're playing with house money. They're building for next year and the future. And they came out with a pretty gutsy effort. I thought they made things difficult for Dubuque on the offensive side for the majority of the night. 4-3 victory. Secondary scoring was the ultimate difference in that game, but definitely a tougher matchup than it would have been on paper.
Yeah, and you do see that quite often. You see a team that makes a deal at the deadline, and it kind of looks like a white flag trade, and like they're giving up on their season. And a lot of times you'll see a team that's in that situation will kind of go on a little bit of a run because, as you mentioned, they don't have a lot of pressure on them. And the other good thing is you have some younger players who are basically their future are playing for roles the following season, and it's really an audition for them. And again, I think the big thing is they don't have pressure on them. And then you come into a place like Dubuque, and Dubuque's expected to win. Dubuque is a team that's in second place in the Eastern Conference and second place overall, and is supposed to win that hockey game. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of pressure on you, and like you said, you're playing with house money, and you can kind of relax and try some things. And I thought Sioux City did. Again, I think their defensive structure is not bad. Mm-hmm. You look at that's kind of been the hallmark of that team. They just, like I said, they don't have the kind of offensive finish that would get them in a position where they could qualify for the playoffs. But again, a really good gutsy effort by the Musketeers, and made it a much better hockey game than a lot of people probably thought it was going to be.
That was win number 8 in a row on home ice for the Fighting Saints. You move to Saturday night, and before we touch on the Hockey for All theme to end the month of February, looking at the hockey game itself, strong first period for the Fighting Saints, and during that first period, it really felt like Sioux Falls was the winner because Dubuque dominated and couldn't score anything. And you felt, this might be one of those games where Sioux Falls is able to capitalize on that takeover in the second period. But credit to the Fighting Saints, it did not take long for them to put one in the back of the net. They laid the groundwork in the first period, started getting the payout in the second period. 21 seconds in, Dylan Jackson scored the goal, and then they get 3 more, a dominant second period. That was the difference in that game.
Yeah, I do think the league has to have some sort of regulation where you can't play Sioux City and Sioux Falls back-to-back because it makes us tongue-tied. That happened all weekend, and that's kind of crazy. But you're exactly right. And I think one thing that I really like about this Saints team is, maybe in the past couple years, they'd have a first period like that where they dominate and they didn't have anything to show for it. and it was almost like, geez, what do we have to do? And then the other team would come and they'd score a goal, and then you're chasing the game. But this team has a lot of poise, and this team it doesn't get rattled by situations like that where they don't score even though they're dominating. And, I thought getting that quick start in the second period really was the difference maker. And, obviously Cherometta scoring a couple goals there in the second period, that was huge as well. But that's what I like about this team. If you have a big period and you don't score, it doesn't seem, nothing really seems to bother them. There's really no circumstance or no situation that really bothers this team. And, for them to pop a couple quick ones real early, that really settled things down and got the big crowd into it.
The big crowd you mentioned, that was one of the nice pieces of a game on Saturday night that really had it all. You had the big crowd, you had the great theme, you obviously had the win. But Hockey for All Night, Hockey for All Month finishes, sponsored by John Deere, Dubuque Works, second annual Hockey for All Month. And as you touched on in the broadcast, we've been talking about it all month long. But it was nice to see this continue, gain a little bit more steam with the Dubuque Community School District hopping on board for year 2, and for the Fighting Saints to continue to be the catalyst in the USHL for promoting diversity and inclusion. And it was a nice way to end it with the biggest crowd since 2017 in the building for Hockey for All Night.
Yeah, and what I like about it is it's really a simple thing. It's just hockey for all. You're not singling out one group. You're not trying to encourage one particular group or anybody. It's everybody, and that's what's really neat about it. And it's not just about. I don't think it's just about hockey. I don't think it's about the USHL. I think it's about the entire community, and it's a great message that the Fighting Saints are sending to the entire community. And I think over the last 10 or 15 years, what I've really appreciated about this team is, bringing awareness to Military Appreciation Night, Breast Cancer Night, men's health initiatives. Those are a lot of things that, many, many years ago were maybe taboo, or you really didn't talk about them, or you really didn't support them. But, I think a team like the Fighting Saints embracing Hockey for All and all those other initiatives is really great for the community and makes it a lot more acceptable. And not only do you raise a lot of money for the United Way in this case, but you bring a lot of attention to it. And I think that's probably the better benefactor of this, is that people are talking about. They're talking about inclusion. They're talking about diversity. And geez, if the Fighting Saints can do it, then I can do it at my workplace, downtown or whatever. And I think that's what's really great. And the Fighting Saints they want to be a really good community member, and I think this is a great way to be a good community member.
Hockey for All Month, second annual Hockey for All Month, sponsored by John Deere, and for all signs pointing to this continuing for some time, hopefully, and the message a good one to continue to spread.
Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't. And it's kind of funny when I was talking to Luke Robinson this weekend about Hockey for All, and it's kind of interesting. Hockey players are like this anyway. If you talk to these guys in September or October, they're all about getting everybody involved. They have such a passion for the sport, and they love to spread the game of hockey to people who don't necessarily get to see it very often or aren't exposed to it. And so Luke was like, we kind of almost don't need a month like this, because that's the way we are all the time. But it's like second nature to them, that they want to go out and spread the word, and get out into elementary schools, and get out into the boys club and the girls club of Dubuque and spread the word. So, but it is. You do need it, because right. It's a great way to spread the word, and it create a lot of attention towards it. I'm not saying Luke didn't want to have it, but he's just saying this is right. Something that it's like second nature to them. It's like you don't have to pull teeth to ask them to do it, because they're on board, and that's something that they enjoy and something that they would do normally. 3,104 in attendance for that victory over Sioux Falls. And before we take our first break, what this did for Dubuque this weekend is, again, continuing a home win streak, which is now at 9 games in a row on home ice, meaning that's their third longest
in the Tier 1 era. 11 wins is the next plateau at home, and then a really tough mark to get to, 15 straight at home. That was the 12-13 team began the season with 15 straight on home ice. But for the Fighting Saints, this just continued to plant themselves firmly in the number 2 spot. Right now, with a month and a half left in the season, Team USA and Green Bay, who has now vaulted up to a tie for third in points, they're 14 points back, both of those teams. Essentially, Dubuque would have to lose 3/4 of their games the rest of the way, and one of those teams would have to win probably 80% of their games to make this flip. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be happening in Dubuque. Pretty much is a certainty to get a first-round bye.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of similar with, I don't know if Dubuque can catch Chicago for first place. It's a similar situation, but, I don't see this team really going into a big funk. They might have a weekend or two where they struggle, or a road trip where they don't play as well as they'd like, but I don't see either Team USA or Green Bay making up 14 points or 12 points or whatever it is. It's not very likely, and the Fighting Saints have been going on all cylinders. They've had great balance, great depth, great goaltending, great defense. You add those all up, and it doesn't really lend itself to seeing a long, prolonged losing streak. So Saints are in a really good situation right now, and now it's a matter of really fine-tuning things and getting continuing this momentum going into the stretch run and into the playoffs.
7 weeks left in the regular season, and the Fighting Saints sitting comfortably 65 points. That is the second most in the USHL and second most in the Eastern Conference. We will take a break. When we come back, looking at the playoff picture in both the East and the West and some of the results from this weekend.